maybe he saw the show and, you know, a Saatchi show, and read the reviews and said, yeah, well, let's bring this guy in as a dialogue for, you know, artists who maybe aren't, or possibly aren't, creating work that is, you know, politically and actively, you know, it's politically and actively charged, but is it functioning on the level that art should function on?
And that's
Go ahead.
What better venue than a world exhibition of biennial to make examples and chop heads on?
Yeah,
I mean, let's go ahead and confront issues, not just like this is how we should operate, but let's have a premise, or not a premise, but let's have a pivot point or antithesis of don't do this shit, dude. You know, like
yeah.
And that's in contrast to Venice, where they haven't really strayed away from the role that they played when when the biennial first started.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you think beyond the point of the lack, from the seeming lack of work or body of work that he has, do you think that bringing in these political overtones would create this criticism, moreover than just analyzing it formally?
No.
I mean that's still a part of it.
I think that's an easy way to enter concept.
Yeah.
You can. I mean, what other more direct way can you go? Like, if you want, like, say any one of us wants to make such and such a piece of work, like, what better way to do it than to already hit a politically charged point of view?
Yeah, and I mean,
That's
it's
true.
so representational of what's,
Yeah.
there isn't a question of what could possibly change.
Mhm.
It's just a direct representation of the issue, or his view on the issue at hand.
Mhm.
It doesn't really allow a dialogue with the viewer. It's kind of a one-liner.
Yeah, Istanbul biennial. We get into.
Well, the title's taken from Bertolt Brecht's Three-Penny Opera, and it's one of the songs that is in the opera, What Keeps Man Alive, which this opera questioned the bourgeois society and the bourgeois operas, and it completely broke down and it separated the notions of the existing theater genres and how those genres played a relationship with the audience. You know, so these bourgeois plays were fantasized. You know, they didn't have agendas really. You know, it was for enjoyment.
Yeah, it
So
was
what
the
Brecht-
Rococo of
It was the
theater.
Rococo of theater, exactly.
Or romantic.
The romantic, yeah.
Whatever.
And so what Brecht does is, you know, he breaks it down and it becomes this political dialogue. He engages the viewer. He confronts the bourgeois society in their own venues. You know, so I mean, he's slapping them in the face essentially. This is the framework of the biennial, where they're asking these questions in the terms of not in theater so much, but in art. You know, is art functioning the way it should be? You know, so you know they're asking these really heavy questions, and they're even asking it of themselves. Like, is the biennial that we put together bourgeois? Is it set for, you know, economic gain? You know, what is the role of what we've created? Is it functioning properly, or is it not? So I think it's really interesting that they've opened themselves up to criticism.
Yeah.
You know, they aren't trying to create. Of course, they're trying to create fabulous dialogue. You know, but I think they're also, you know, letting themselves and allowing themselves to be criticized.
Yeah.
Which I think is, I mean, a really powerful move on their part.
I mean, you know, even going with the curatorial placement of venue, which have been operating as venue for this biennial, I believe, previously as well. Education, right? Talking about the bourgeois as criminal, and the criminal as bourgeois, as was a quote from the curatorial statement. Education, you know, bringing that into the role of the biennial institution as not just a pleasure format, but an educational format to potentially create more activist approach outside of the role of viewer, right, which we'll get into. Interestingly enough, as well as the understanding that the biennial has to work on it does have to work on an economical standpoint of gain for the sake of function. I mean, to be an ongoing exhibition, this is just, it's inherent in the role. So interestingly enough, some of the venues that these works are being held at are reformed and retired educational institutions, as well as economic places of gain.
Yeah, isn't one in a tobacco warehouse?
Yes, tobacco warehouse.
An abandoned Greek school, a tobacco warehouse, and Entrepot number 3.
I mean, they're really considering like location, the implications of specific histories of location, as well as the nature of the works that's going in those places.
I almost feel like the the Istanbul Biennale is a work in itself. With all the considerations they've taken into, they've asked every question of what they can do to convey the message they want to convey, and they've turned what was an institution like it is in Venice into an actual art piece.
Or a question.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
I would, that's fair to say.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, what they're doing almost ties directly to what decolonizing PS are doing. So they're redeveloping these venues, these abandoned venues, and they're reusing them. What used to be a Greek school that now lacks students, and so they're bringing this back into an educational facility.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see whether or not they of how far they take this concept or this question that is posed with their biennial, and see if they do take some route as decolonizing.ps did, and opening it up as they already have. I mean, through their website, but for more of a interactive global maybe critique or community to form to better their understanding and execution of this event. I mean, so of course there's some social restraints, but they are breaking some of these barriers and exploring other ways of getting these artists' works out there. This social activism, cultural comparisons, and I think they've, from what I've seen so far, they've done a successful job with that.
So following Brecht's model of what he has constructed for the Biennale, he is asking the question for the viewer, and he states it on the homepage. Can we go beyond looking and transform the viewer into a more productive participant and even an accomplice? That's a new question. Can the viewer be an accomplice?
What do you think, Philip?